night. Furthermore, this statute refers uniquely to discussions where publicity, and I repeat, publicity, could adversely impact the purchase price that has already been determined and announced. The town attorney then told me that the statute of frauds, CGS 52550, says that the sales price hasn't been legally established until a purchase agreement has been executed by both parties. Ben, I don't know where you found this one, but I did try to read the unreadable part that pertained to real estate transactions and can't for the life of me persuade myself that a sales price set for legal purposes of civil action under a fraud statute has anything to do with what can be divulged to the public or when under freedom of information rules. I believe, therefore, that the town council actions regarding the sale of 690 Cedar Street, which I am in favor of, are a clear violation of Connecticut FOI requirements. Information that should have been made public was withheld from the public. Actions were rushed through without a proper notification and an opportunity for public involvement. A sham public hearing was conducted with the intent of suppressing public comment rather than encouraging it. I was denied access to specific documents even after I made a proper written request. The Newington Town Council should be instructed. I'm saying this to the Freedom of Information Commission, remember. The Newington Town Council should be instructed to begin the process of selling 690 Cedar Street again, this time being totally open with the public and assuring the citizens of Newington they have a proper opportunity to provide input to their local elected and appointed leaders prior to committing the town of Newington to a purchase and sale agreement. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Cassell. The next member of the public's caller ID says Barbara.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Barbara Squillicoat, 275 Field Street. After listening to Rose and Mr. Clark, I think my sentiments probably are about the same. I wanted to know basically where this money is going to go if this sale goes through. What fund it goes into? Does it go into the general fund? Does it go into, like Rose said, the land appropriations fund? Where does it land? But also, I'm disappointed too that there wasn't more information out there on the sale of this. I know one of the meetings, I think that you had, everybody went into an executive session, so there was nothing really said in that meeting. And then last night, I did get some information, but I personally feel, as well as they do, that more information should have been forthcoming and the public made aware. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Let me just look and make sure there's no one else with their hand raised. All right, seeing none, we will continue on with our agenda. The next item is remarks by councilors on public participation. I see no hands raised. We will move on. The next item on the agenda is consideration of old business. The only agenda item under that is sale of town-owned property at 690 Cedar Street. So I'll remind everyone, the purpose of this evening's meeting is to review. We have had a chance as a council to review the agreement that was presented to us, the terms of which had been discussed in an executive session with the entire council. And we are now able to consider moving forward with the sale. I would like to open it up to the town manager for his comments on this topic first.
Yes, as discussed last meeting, this is a opportunity for the town council to determine if there is a desire to sell or dispose of 690 Cedar Street, about a 4-acre or 3.99 acre site that the town has owned for a number of years, taken through a tax sale from a business that had closed up. So tonight, the council's decision is whether they want to dispose of the property through a sale, or did they want to keep the property in our inventory? And that's essentially it. And what you would be doing tonight is authorizing me to enter into an agreement with a proposed buyer and move forward in the sale process, which will take several months. There won't be a closing immediately, certainly. There are a number of issues that have to be worked out between the town and the state and the buyer in his due diligence. So this is basically to authorize me to sign a purchase agreement. And it's essentially saying that the town has decided to sell the piece of property. If you choose not to sell it, then you would vote no, and the property will remain in the town's inventory, and the purchase agreement will be null and void.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chapman. Would someone please read the resolution into the records so that we can begin council discussion on the matter?
I'll do it.
Go ahead, Councilor Mankey.
Resolved, the Newington Town Council hereby authorizes Keith Chapman, Town Manager, to execute any and all documents necessary to complete the sale of town-owned property located at 690 Cedar Street.
Is there a second? Second by Councilor Camillo. All right, now we'll open it for council discussion. I have a quick question. I don't see any hands up quite yet, but I see that we have Steve Kosofsky with us, the town assessor. Steve, can you just comment on I guess, the amount of taxes that could be collected on this property based on the sale price and the value of the property?
I'm assuming you're referring to the proposed purchase price?
Correct. I guess my point being that for about 12 years now, I believe, it's been a property that we have been trying to sell and has been, well, not for the whole 12 years, but we've collected no taxes on it for a very long time. And so I just wanted to know what we would, ballpark figure of the possibility of what we could collect if the sale were to go through.
Approximately $40,000 per year.
Okay. And that's just the land itself without any development on it, correct?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Mankey?
Yeah, I just had a quick question, maybe to answer some of the comments. It's my understanding that any sale of property, the money would go into the general fund, and we could make disbursements from there to specific line items or specific projects. Is that correct?
Yes, what would happen is, and any funds that are received from the sale of this property would go into the general fund, and following January or in January, the council can determine if it wants to place it in a certain aspect or a certain area of the budget. Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor Bedrejko?
Okay. I want to kind of piggyback off of what the mayor asked to Steve. Can you estimate how much in taxes we've lost over these past years when we haven't been able to collect on taxes? If you're saying it's $40,000 a year, maybe times 10, $400,000, perhaps more.
I think at the time that we acquired the property, the amount of back tax, including interest that was due at the time, was $1,450,000.
So that was the back tax, and then plus the 10-year, every subsequent year, it just kept adding to that we didn't collect anything.
That would be correct. Once the town took it, it became exempt and there was no tax due.
So probably over 2 million we've lost on it. Okay.
While Steve's figuring that out, it may be skewed somewhat because he's figuring out based upon the current proposal for the property. If the proposal was less, then certainly the taxes would be less because the value of the land would be that much less. So, Steve, have you got something worked up?
Steve, you're on mute.
At our present mill rate, if in fact this parcel was taxable this particular year, we would have generated about $12,000 in taxes. So this is the final year of our 5-year revaluation when that value was determined. So for the last 5 years, it would have been 60,000.
Okay, thank you.
Counselor Minor.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just wanted to preface my comments by that I do fully support the sale of the property on an amenable project that will pay dividends to the mill rate as well as the development of the property. My concern is that I feel today we're in a bit of a quandary because Tuesday night, we did not have the purchase sale agreement in front of us for review, and we're being asked to make decisions on its content based on no information. And that just looks like it may have been a simple communication error, but we did have the opportunity that was afforded to us by the town manager to review the developer's initial proposal as well as the counter proposal that was drafted and sent back to the developer for consideration. Where we're at now is looking at documents that have been developed that I would, well, first off, I'm not sure if Ben is on or not. I can't see my participants window, but I would question, okay, well, let me just ask the question and then maybe he could help me with it. Is we have now brought this to the table for consideration. The question I have for him is, are we now required to discuss all the components of the agreement publicly, or can we be allowed the opportunity to have another executive session without hampering the overall efforts? So I'm not exactly sure if we're publicly yet or if we're not, because it was listed as a discussion piece and the broad details of the proposal have been disclosed, but not the finite details, which to me are equally, if not more important than anything else. So Ben, if you could help me out with that.
Yeah, Counselor Minor, if you can hear me.
We can hear you.
Oh,
Yep.
good, because I'm having a little bit trouble with my connection. Once this agreement is entered, it is my opinion that it's completely public at that point, and that an executive session really wouldn't be appropriate.
Okay, but where we are tonight at, right now in this public meeting, is it appropriate to request to re-enter an executive session, or is it now been publicly disclosed that we are no longer afforded that opportunity to discuss privately? Because I just have some concerns within it, and I don't want to publicly put them on the record unless we're afforded no other opportunity to do so. Thank you.
Well, I don't see a reason why you couldn't go into an executive session if the body so chose.
Okay, to be open and transparent with the rest of the council, I would be concerned to go over. I don't think there's anything overly extreme, but I think there are considerations for action on the best interest of the town that I think need to be considered as part of this, where I don't want to lose the opportunity to be able to discuss it further without becoming a matter of public record. And again, I want to put it again on the record. I support the sale of the property, but I want to make sure that we are representing the interests of the town as a whole. So I would
I
offer
don't, I
that
don't,
to the
if
mayor.
if that's a requisite of yours and of the council, you could reconvene and properly notice an executive session and move forward in that regard, if that's what the council desires.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate it, Attorney
You're welcome.
Acona. Yeah, Madam Mayor, I would respectfully request that we be afforded the opportunity to allow for an additional executive session. I do realize that time is of the essence on this, and proper notice would really put us very close to the requested return. But I think it's prudent for us to discuss these openly amongst ourselves before we place a final record on it. Thank you.
Thank you. Counselor Camillo has his hand up.
We've been trying to move this property for years, and now we're in a position to do this, and it's slowing things down. If we didn't have the information the other night and we knew about it the day before, we should have asked for it. You have it now. We've got Ben here. If you have any questions, ask Ben, and we should vote on this tonight. We can't afford to lose a prospective buyer on this property here. It's very important. And there may be another project down the road next to it, and we need both of these projects going at the same time. So I think this should be voted on shortly. Thank you.
Thank you. Counselor Anist?
Thank you. By no means, I'm definitely in support of the sale of this property. However, there was some items that we did discuss in executive session that we were assured were part of this contract, and they're not in the contract. And I think that's what our concerns are. We want to make sure that we're protecting the town going down before this closing and post-closing. We don't want the buyer to come back to us. And that's what our concern really is. So, I mean, I believe we could probably go into executive session on Monday evening, vote on it Monday evening. But if we can have answers to our questions, I think we would feel a lot more comfortable in moving forward.
Thank you, Counselor Anist. Counselor Mankey?
Yeah, as long as I've been in the council now, which granted isn't that long compared to others, but we've been trying to sell this property, and we've had two other prospective buyers that were interested in, and it fell through. My concern is the longer we delay this and the longer we nitpick this, if this falls through, it's not going to be on my head because I'm ready to move forward today. I think constantly delaying and constantly second guessing ourselves shows bad faith in people who are asking to come in and develop this site. And frankly, how long are they going to sit around and say, okay, well, we'll wait, and not look for another place to develop? So I'm comfortable with moving forward tonight. I think it's important we show that we're ready to move forward. It's important we increase the grand list. So I'd be in favor of moving forward.
Okay, thank you, Counselor Mankey. Yes, Counselor Mankey. I'm trying to see who's next, sorry. Counselor Nagel, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I agree with Counselor Camillo and indeed what Counselor Mankey have said just prior to me. What we're looking at to approve tonight is an agreement for purchase and sale of real estate property. It's not a contract. It's not the final deal. It is to start the work that, as our town attorney, Mr. Ancona, pointed out, is going to take several months. And my understanding is both parties can change, can add, can whatever, if indeed they deem it to be so. So this is not a final thing that puts everything in cement at this moment. So therefore, I'm in favor of moving this tonight because as was pointed out by Councilor Mankey, the more we put this off, the more our prospective buyer may very well not want to enter into an agreement, especially whatever generally has been agreed to at the moment as a starting point. This is just a starting point. It's not a final document that says things are sold and everything has been agreed to. I have no more information than any other person on this council in terms of this agreement and materials that have been sent out. So we all have material. And indeed, if there are any concerns, they, in the process beyond this point, can be brought up, and I'm sure will be dealt with by the whatever the appropriate way is doing it. We have a town attorney, and we have able people in town that are working for us in town government that are able to answer our questions and able to work with us throughout this entire process. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Nagel. Quick question, Attorney Ancona, I'm not sure if Mr. Minor, I think what he was asking when he asked earlier was, are we able to ask specific questions about the contract tonight in open session? Is that allowable or not?
I don't see any reason why you can't.
So the document's not necessarily public in terms of all of the details, but if we have specific questions, we could ask them?
Yeah, I think that might be a healthy exercise.
Okay, thank you. The next hand up is Councilor Minor.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I appreciate the clarification, Attorney Ancona. My concern is the vast majority of questions or bullet points that I had specific to this transaction, I don't want to do anything to jeopardize its finality at the end of it. And my rebuttal to some of the other counselors, and while I do respect their desire to move this forward, I do as well. But we afforded the buyer additional time after we were given a promised commitment date because they did not have the ability to execute the purchase sale agreement on their part. And I'm sure we're getting down to the 11th hour that if we could not execute it by the requested return date, that they would afford us that same respect in terms of fine tuning the last of open items that we had concerns with. And I'm more than happy to bring them out publicly, but I think it would be more appropriate to bring them out in an executive session format so we don't potentially jeopardize the deal. But the other consideration would be that we're literally talking about 45, maximum of 60 days that have transpired from first consideration to where we are now. So this is not something that's gone on for years. And 25 years in commercial real estate that I've spent, it is very common for these back and forth to go on for an extended period of time because of the size of the transaction. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Minor. Councilor Anist?
Thank you. Ben, this is for you. This is the purchase and sale agreement. This is a legal binding document, and this is the final document. Any additions would have to have addendums executed. Am I correct?
Yes, but addendums can only be executed with the consent or mutual assent of both parties. And Councilor Nagel is almost right, not quite. It is because of this contract requiring a development agreement. That is the area that can be massaged and worked through. But this, in fact, is a contract. It's a binding contract. And once it is executed, we go to the next steps therefrom.
The due
And
diligence.
that would be to go to the development agreement.
Right, all the due diligence.
Yes, due
Okay.
diligence and the development agreement. Those are two
Right.
different things.
So if there's any addendums that need to be executed, would that have to come before the council for approval?
I don't believe so.
As long as it doesn't change the terms?
Well,
the purchase
remember,
price or the sales
the
price?
count, I'm sorry, miss, I think we spoke over each other. Go
I'm
ahead.
sorry.
Well, remember, the council is an advisory body. It's a political body intended to deal with policy. We have a chief executive officer who is town manager Chapman, and he would be the one in charge of every intricacy regarding the contract, the development agreement, and the process moving forward. So statutorily, all that's required here is pretty much a yes or no by the council. It wouldn't be, I don't think would be fair to you even to have you intimately involved in every aspect of a development agreement or a purchase and sale agreement, et cetera.
No, I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is if, say, they come back and there's some deficiencies and there's going to be an adjustment to the purchase price, would that have to come back to us?
I don't believe so, no.
Okay.
Councilor Camillo.
All set. I got my answers to my questions. Thank you.
If I may, Madam Mayor, I just want to follow up with Councilor Annis' question. I should
Absolutely.
rephrase that. Unless there's a profound variation between now and Monday at 5 o'clock when this contract terminates for failure to accept or the offer terminates, if it's a profound variation, yes, I do believe Mr. Chapman should come back to this body.
Can you reiterate that? The offer terminates on Monday at what time?
5 o'clock.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Councilor Menke.
So just so we're clear, if we decide to hold another executive session on Monday and discuss it further, this contract terminates and the buyer decides to walk away, and we've forfeited the chance to relieve some of the pressure on the taxpayers by increasing our grand list, then some of us in the council are responsible for that failure. Now, granted, the buyer could say, no, okay, I'll give you a couple more days. But if they decide not to give us a couple more days because they just feel like going someplace else, we're going to lost an opportunity to sell a piece of property that really is worthless to us. It's just a piece of 2.998, 3.9 acres, whatever it is. It's just sitting there, and it's a burden to our taxpayers because we're not collecting taxes on it. So I think that's what we're really talking about here. So I would say we need to move ahead.
Thank you, Councilor Menke. Councilor Minor.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I know that in past practices, we've held study workshops and such on Saturdays that were quote unquote public meetings that were properly noticed. Is that an opportunity for us to use to try to not choke the timeline right down to the last second? Is that an option, number one? And number two, if it is not an option, would we be in our best interest to request an extension of a week's time to probably vet this? So I just would be curious to whether or not that's an option.
Thank you, Councilor Minor. Councilor Annis.
Thank you again. I think our concern is the couple of the issues that we have that we want to discuss. And it's not that we want this deal to go forward, but we just want our questions answered. And I don't think that's a lot asking, because if you had questions, you would want them answered as well. And there was issues brought up in executive session that are not in this contract. And we just want an explanation why. There's probably a good explanation why they're not included, but we would like to hear those.
I'm relatively certain that Attorney Ancona suggested that you are able to ask your questions. Is that correct, Attorney Ancona?
Yes, please go ahead.
Deputy Mayor Bedrejko.
Well, no, if Attorney Ancona says that they can be answered during the session, fine. But personally, I know earlier Councilor Minor had said, can we break now and go into executive session and then come back and vote on it? I I would not be opposed to that.
We,
If
just
it's gonna be
point
answered,
of point of procedure, because it's a special meeting, you cannot change the agenda. Is that correct? And an executive session has to be properly noticed.
That's correct.
So that's not an option for this evening.
Okay, well, and in any event, I've been watching, I mean, we've all been watching the sale of this land, and for the past 5 years, RFPs have gone out. We've got nibbles and one of the nibbles was not endorsed by, in terms of a vision or whatever. Actually, both of the nibbles were kind of ambiguous in terms of what would be advantageous for transit-oriented development. And transit-oriented development is a specialty. We're stuck with it. All I can say is that we're stuck with it. And from what I understand, the developer who wants to purchase this property does have a vision that seems to be more in tune with anything we've seen so far. But again, all we are voting on is selling the property. We're not voting on what eventually necessarily will be there in terms of specifics, numbers, whatever. But it does appear the concept plan, the vision is more in tune of what we had envisioned through our PLCD. And when the bus station got thrust upon us, the more we wait, I am concerned. This is not a fly-by-night mom and pop developer. This is a developer who I'm sure has many other opportunities. And we talked in the past about making it difficult to do business in Newington. And if I were one of the principal owners of the individual of the company that wants to purchase the plan, I might be having second thoughts right now too.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. So it's difficult for me to wait until the very end to speak. I'm going to throw a couple of thoughts in now. Gail, you did steal a few of my ideas. The notes I've been jotting down here are that the will of this council as a whole, I believe, over the last year or so, has been that our focus is on increasing our grand list, increasing economic development, decreasing the burden on the taxpayer, and working on transit-oriented development. And all of those things are tied into this tonight. For counselors to suggest that they haven't had enough information is, I don't understand, because we were all involved in the executive sessions that led up to the agreement that's in front of us. If there are questions about that agreement, we're being told to ask them. I didn't see any surprises in the agreement. If I missed something, that is certainly a possibility, and I would welcome the questions to be asked. I don't understand why we would jeopardize an agreement that is set to terminate on Monday when we have an opportunity to settle it this evening. What I've heard from the counselors that have spoken, and I believe almost everyone has spoken, is that there is clearly a will of this council to move this forward. So I do see a few more hands up, but I'm certainly willing to move it forward based on the discussions that we've had and what I'm hearing this evening. I think this deal makes sense. I think it was negotiated in good faith. I believe that the town manager and the town attorney have done what we asked them to do in this agreement. I do have faith in their ability to execute an adequate contract on our behalf and based on what we told them to do during our executive sessions. So if there are questions, please ask. And otherwise, the motion is on the floor. So unless someone makes a motion to withdraw and that passes, we're going to move this forward this evening. The next hand up is Councilor Minor.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Well, my preference was to do this in executive session where we could have an open dialogue, but if we want to go on the record with it, that's fine. The issues are not the proposed use. I am actually excited to see the potential of the proposed use. My issues are there is no exclusionary use to the project. So I'm going to give you a list, and we can rebut them if you wish afterwards. But the first thing is that one thing that was asked about was whether or not the slope rights of the abutting property have been revealed to the purchaser. There's no indication within the agreement that they have. The second being that existing easements, whether they be Town of Newington, DOT, and the Hayes slope rights, should be listed and identified within the documents. There is reference to the Fuss and O'Neill abatement and remediation reports, but they don't reference the final and the, I want to say, 100+ page report as being included within that. And with that, I question whether or not their clause of being completely transparent to all documented reports being an issue. Control of the property, once it is turned over, needs to be maintained within the town of Newington's discretion and control. That is a huge issue when it comes to both the EPA and DEP's discretion to control of the property following the brownfield remediation, that there has not been access granted to the public at large to disturb the current environmental conditions. I believe it is referenced or was referenced in our executive meeting to retain Fuss and O'Neill on the licensed environmental professional to continue with the purchasing agent, but that representation should be made directly with the buyer, and there should be nothing less specific to the town of Newington. The purchaser, should be made aware that they're responsible for any adverse environmental conditions that they create as a means of their, further investigation. There is an expectation with the environmental cap is going to be required, which we know that, and it should be specifically noted within the PSA. There's reference to assistance with governing bodies and commissions, but it should specifically list the Conservation Commission, Town Planning and Zoning Commission, Building Inspector, Fire Marshal, should be independently and specifically listed, so as not to be construed to mean that the town council approved the agreement that the purchaser is owed all town approvals. That's not within our discretion or purview. Building permits are specifically referenced within a paragraph. That's generally something that we may not see construction documents or any form of final development plans for in excess of the closing time. And those fees would not be known until that time. I think the biggest thing is that the town should not be the recipient of pursuing additional grant requests or environmental remediation requests. It should be up to the purchaser to manage any further remediation projects that would be required, and it should be specifically identified that our inclusionary reimbursement available to them, should there be some, be directly identified. I think there's some of this that may be considered to be part of the operational or addendums that are not disclosed as part of what is currently on the record to us tonight. But my issue with delaying this for a few days is that this document as presented gives the buyer 330 days to perform their due diligence and request additional 30-day extensions for an additional 4 months, which would, put this potentially into a year, 2 months, year and 3 months. So the idea of delaying this for a day or two after we afforded the purchaser the same respect on delaying their purchase agreement back to us, I think the biggest concern I have is one line, and that is the right of reversal. And with that, we are not identifying beyond what the purchaser has described, but we're not binding him to develop that project. So he has the complete right to either develop something different than what we envision as a town and what has been disclosed to us to, physically construct. And the second thing is that if the developer were to choose another development plan, that if it was an allowable use by zoning, town planning and zoning would have no discretion over it either. These are all things I think that need to be considered within the final draft of the purchase sale agreement. If market rate apartments are the desired construction for the developer, I would request that we put a percentage set aside for affordable housing, as we are bound to the 10% threshold. And as this project would increase the market rate housing inventory, it would also increase our required 10% threshold to meet the affordable housing. The right of assignment should only be left to be within the town of Newington's approval. If there is an inability to pursue the project, be it environmental or otherwise, it should rely on the town of Newington to have final approval for what is proposed before there is another transaction or another project pursued. Those are my comments that I have at this point, but I would welcome any other councilors' thoughts.
Before going to other counselors, I'd prefer to go to Attorney Ancona. Would you like to respond to any of that?
Well, I guess it's quite a comprehensive list that Councilor Minor presented. I think most of it initially, maybe 9/10 of it, are very valid issues and good points if you're working for the buyer and not the town. Those are obligations incumbent upon a purchaser. And it is their duty and their due diligence to follow through on those issues, not ours. Regarding requiring a 10% affordability, I mean, that's a council call, that's a town manager call, that's not my call. I can't imagine being a buyer of such a property and being told that I need to develop market rate units, but also include Section 8. They seem to not mix. But that's just a personal sentiment. It's not a legal issue. So I'm not sure. Now, regarding easements and so forth, they're all on the land records. When they do their title search, they'll see them. What else was there? It was a very comprehensive list, and I appreciate that. But again, what they're going to build. I mean, there's a development agreement that needs to be entered. We're quite a bit of ways before actually any shovels being put in the ground. Can't hear you, Mayor.
Thank you. Mr. Chapman stepped away. I was going to ask him to speak to the affordable housing percentages. I know that they had been looking at the numbers in town. That has been a concern that was brought up by a member of the public, but quite frankly, the developer at hand, they are looking for a fair market value housing. So I don't know that it makes sense for us to impose a 10% on them that does not fit in the project that they're thinking of doing. And I don't feel like that is necessarily within our purview in terms of imposing that on the buyer. And if I were a buyer, I wouldn't want to do that either if they have a certain project that they're going for and that doesn't fit the project. So I would be concerned about putting a restriction like that on. I do know that the town is working toward that 10%, and I'm not sure exactly how close we are. Mr. Chapman, do you have any idea of that?
Well, we're still not at the limit that we have to be. However, until the census is done this year, we really won't have an accurate count. But I will tell you that I don't believe that this buyer has any interest in building affordable housing within market rate housing. It just wouldn't work. I think he'll walk, I believe. I haven't talked to him about it, but my conversations with him have been always market rate. So, I mean, it's your call. Again, the topic for tonight is, do you want to sell the property? That's the topic. It's not what they're building, how many units, whether it's going to be affordable or anything else. It's, do you want to sell the property? If you want to sell it, then authorize B to sign the papers. If you don't want to sell it, then say no. And that's the end of it. You know, and as was pointed out, this developer is developing all over the country. If you think Newington is the hot spot, I hate to tell you this, there's plenty of other hot spots that he can invest his money in. You've waited a long time for this, and I'll tell you honestly, my staff has busted their rear ends to get this to where it is. And I take offense to the fact that you did have the purchase agreement last Monday and nobody looked at it. And then you got it Wednesday morning. And there was no questions posed to the town attorney or the town manager from the time you got it and supposedly read it until this meeting tonight. And this is unfair for many, many reasons for many, many people. And I'm very upset with how this is turning out. So I will stop talking at this point.
Okay, Counselor Menke.
Yeah, I just would remind everybody that this is only to sell the property. What's built there is up to the developer or the buyer to use the property as he sees fit, providing it goes through all the regulatory, the inland wetlands conservation and TPC. They all sign in just like they would do at any other development, any other property. I see it no different than any other process, but we're only deciding to sell it. And again, if councils want to wait and then lose the possibility that the buyer walks away and says, "Oh, I'm going to build it in Albuquerque someplace and not in Newington," that's on you guys then, because then it's going to be your responsibility to explain why you had an opportunity to take a piece of property that is useless to us, take it and not collect any taxes on it, why you chose then to risk this and risk growing the grand list and risk collecting taxes on it because we needed a couple more days. And if the buyer says, "Okay, well, I'll give you a couple more days," that's great. But if the buyer says, "Up 5 o'clock Monday, I'm out of here," then we're going to wait another 4 or 5 years to get this piece of property sold or developed. Then that's on you guys.
He's frozen.
I didn't know that she had called my name. She's on mute. I just had a question on Councilor Minor's statement about, it could be 330 plus days before they stick a shovel in the ground. I mean, we have had properties all over town where, I look at the property across from Fenn Road. How long has that been waiting to have a shovel put in the ground? I don't see that as an issue. The church that was on the corner of Payne Road and Church Street, they took forever to get that in the ground. So I don't see that as an issue. I mean, it's happened before, and if it happens again, it happens again. Still on mute, Beth.
Just when I said no one else's hand is up, Counselor Nagel put his hand up. So go ahead, Counselor Nagel.
I would like to move the question for a vote.
Second up.
I would agree with that. Susan, could you, Counselor Minor, one last question?
2 single specific questions. The way this proposal is written now, the developer has the right to pursue any other project other than what was proposed and disclosed to us to date. Is there any way to get that into the proposal without being an issue with the developer? Can that be at least pursued? That being number one. Number two being the issue with the environmental, that there's been full disclosures to them and they are aware of the available funds for it, as well as any tax adjustments or tax abatements should be disclosed so we're all aware and there's no misconsideration to it. As a final comment, in all due respect, Keith, I understand and respect everything that you've done in a short period of time to bring a potential buyer to the table, and that does not go unnoticed. I am thrilled beyond belief to have a potential buyer at the table ready to go, but I just want to protect the interests of the town and the residents that we represent to make sure that we've given them every opportunity to weigh in beyond whether or not we accept it. So that was my only comment. I appreciate those. If Ben or Keith could weigh in on those two specific issues. Thank you.
Well, I guess I'll address the latter issue first regarding environmentals and so forth. I can't imagine staff or the town manager would withhold any information. I just don't see that happening. And if Keith, you want to step in here, I certainly appreciate it.
Yeah, as far as the environmental aspect goes, Fuss and O'Neill is standing by to be employed by the town and by the buyer. They have been the environmental engineers on this project since the town took possession of it. The buyer is fully aware. They've had numerous discussions on the environmental issues, as we have. Fuss and O'Neill will serve both capacities and get this project done. As far as what your other comment was, I forget what it was now. If you could just remind me, I'll respond to that as well.
Yeah, it was specific to identifying the tax abatement and eligible environmental funds in full disclosure, one, and number two, on the ability to reassign the property without the town's input. So in the event that the developer either couldn't or wouldn't pursue the project that has been proposed, I think at the least, the town of Newington, being you or TPZ or somebody, should be afforded the opportunity to weigh in to what its proposed use could be. Because my concern is that if he can't do it and we're waiting, and John's comment before was 330 days, that's just to finish the due diligence of the contract. We're still probably another year beyond that to actually stick a shovel in reality. But those are the two, Keith.
Well, as far as the tax abatement goes, that's one of the areas that the town council has the ability to decide, and it'll be brought to you once it's determined exactly what is going to be built on the property and how much money is going to be expended by the developer to develop the property. You know, we have spent many, many hours. There is no reason for me or anyone to believe that the buyer is not fully sincere on their intentions on this property. They are trying to get this project ahead of several others. But by delaying this, we probably will be further out than what we would hope to have a taxable property back on the rolls. I hope they're not listening to what is being said tonight, because it doesn't reflect well on the town of Newington, in my opinion. You know, this was done in good faith, and if the town loses this opportunity, you may be sitting there another 10 or 15 years. And I just think that, you know, if there were questions, you've had time to put those questions forth to the town attorney and to me before this meeting tonight, and they weren't done. And it's not fair. So as far as I'm concerned, I've answered the question to my best of my ability.
Thank you. I see no other hands raised, so we'll move to a roll call vote, please.
Counselor Anist,
Yes.
Counselor Braverman. Counselor Braverman. Counselor Budraco,
Yes.
Counselor Camillo,
Yes.
Counselor Donahue,
Yes.
Yes.
Counselor Mankey,
Yes.
Counselor Minor,
Yeah.
Yes.
Counselor Nagel,
Yes.
Mayor Del Buono.
Yes.
9-0.
Congratulations, council. We are moving forward with the sale of the property at 690 Cedar Street and hopefully some future economic development for our town. Well done, everyone. Thank you.
Mayor,
Yes.
I'd just like to confirm, you had a first and a second on a motion to move. You need to vote on that first and then on the full motion. That was first and seconded.
We did that.
Counselor Mankey read in the motion.
No, you read in the motion, Counselor Nagel moved a motion to move the question forward. That's a vote.
Oh, so you're saying that the vote we just took was on that and not on the actual item?
Correct. You need to vote on the motion to move the question forward first, and then you can vote on the full question.
Okay, so we already had the other motion on the table. So procedurally, is it still on the table or do we need to read it back in again?
No, that question will still stand.
Okay.
But he moved a motion to move the question. So that was the original motion read because it's effective to stop debate. So we need to vote on that and then vote on the full motion.
So it's two separate motions.
That is correct.
Okay. So now we have to vote on the actual resolution, which is the complete the
Which I
sale.
read. Right.
Right. Counselor Mankey's motion, correct?
That is correct.
Okay. We'll move to a roll call vote, please.
Okay, Counselor Anist,
Yes.
Counselor Braverman, Counselor Budraco,
Yes.
Counselor Camillo,
Yes.
Counselor Donahue.
Yes.
Yes.
Mankey,
Yes.
Counselor Minor,
Yes.
Counselor Nagel,
Yes.
Mayor Del Buono.
Yes.
9-0.
All right, I'll congratulate us again. Thank you, guys. I think this is a wonderful deal for us. I am appreciative, especially of the work that Mr. Chapman, Mr. Kosofsky, and the rest of the staff have put into this. I greatly appreciate all of the work that's gone into moving this forward and getting us going on this. And I look forward to what the future holds on this property. Okay, the next item on our agenda, I'm sorry, I switched my document to the agreement, is public participation. Any member of the public may participate again by raising your hand in the participants window or by dialing *9 if you are participating on the phone in the Zoom meeting. Mr. Castell, you are first.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, no, I want to congratulate you. As I said, I'm very happy. I wish that you've been able to consider an affordable housing component. I'm very sorry about that. I would like to come to Mr. Minor's defense. I think it probably took a day or two to read the contract, purchase and sale agreement, and note all the things that he noted. And I think it's important for everybody to take note of them because if these things remain unresolved, or as they are being resolved in the future, you could encounter problems. I was a little surprised that there were so many items in a contract drawn up by professionals that seems to be deficient. But I'll leave that go for a while and just breathe a sigh of relief and thank everybody for their hard work. And Mr. Chapman, that includes you too. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Costello. Any other public comment? All right, seeing none, we will go to a motion to adjourn. Oh, I'm sorry, remarks by counselors. I apologize, folks. Any remarks by counselors? All right, seeing none, motion.
Councilor Braverman actually has her hand raised. Hold on one moment.
Oh, I apologize. I couldn't see. her.
Hello, Mayor.
Hi, Sharon.
So I would like to start an unofficial, informal discussion with Central folks and our folks to see how best to make 690 Cedar work for students and ourselves. It can't hurt to, we've always done that in the past, confirm that with a couple of people. A lot of people have been away because of the pandemic and whatever.
Counselor Braverman,
But I did confirm that they have no idea.
Couple of things. Counselor Braverman, I did not hear the beginning of your comments. But we are bound by our special meeting rules, which are that our comments need to be relative to only the agenda item. So I heard something about Central, and I'm not sure if that's related to the sale of the property. Right now, we're bound to that.
Okay, well, only because Central abuts the property, more or less. And the students that will live there are Central students. So that's my only thought.
Okay. Thank you.
So it's down the road, we can plan for it for sure. They're willing to come to the table.
Okay, thank you, Councilor Braverman. Any other council comment? All right, seeing none, we'll move to a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Councilor Mankey, seconded by Councilor Donahue. All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, thank you, everyone. Have a good evening.
Bye.
Thank you.